On June 29th, 2013, from Allentown, Pennsylvania, nearly 2,000 miles away from home and family, I launched a revolution, a life-changing adventure. And with one click of the mouse, I sent the following email. To Mom and Dad, my 3 older siblings, Matt, Marcy, and Kristen, and the 2 younger siblings, Tom and Melanie. Subject: questions with which to know you better. To whom it may concern, and those of you I don't know very well, I don't believe it will come as a shock to any of you that I don't consider us the poster family for closeness. This is not a complaint as much as it is an observation. We can continue to go the way we have always gone, and I am sure it will be just fine. The worst 4-letter word. Due to my multiple experiences with divorce, I have had the opportunity of having to meet and bring new people into my life. In this process, I often describe my family members, their spouse, and children. I must admit, I am probably providing less than accurate information on all of you. I like to play a game with complete strangers in which I ask them to tell me their life in 30 seconds. So if willing, I would like to play a game that doesn't particularly have an end. I would like to play a very slow yet detailed version of Tell Me Your Life in 30 seconds. My big idea is to ask one question a week and reply all with our answers. With everyone having busy lives, I think that a question a week is plenty. And if we answer 52 questions a year, we might just get to know each other more than the strangers we are now. So with that, question 1. Inspired by David Letterman, what are the top 10 highlights of your life? It was with this invitation that I embarked upon a personal and family transformation. I knew that I would know several of the highlights of each of their lives, but with each shared answer, I received new information on each of them. My oldest sister, Marcy, answered, climbing to the top of Greylock and back down alive, a mountain peak here in Idaho's Sawtooth. My father replied, marrying Carolyn, the hope of my life. Each of our children, in-laws, and 16 grandchildren. Our happy, challenging, and rewarding times together. Witnessing who each of you have become and how you have chosen to serve your fellow man. And as I have thought about this opportunity to share our lives with one another, as Tony the Tiger would say, it's great. Just a few months previously, in the summer of 2013, I attended the Oborn family reunion in Atlanta, Idaho, a little slice of heaven along the Sawtooth mountain range, home to our family reunion for decades. I was 38 years old. I was experiencing my second divorce, and I felt disconnected. There we were, all together as a family, and yet I hadn't felt close to them since we were kids, all living together. I was disconnected from my life. I was disconnected from my wife. I was disconnected from my family. The irony of my circumstance is that I had become a mediator, resolving conflict, resolving marriage and family conflict. As a mediator, I learned that to resolve conflict by asking questions and listening to the answers. As a mediator, it is unethical to give advice. So correct me if I'm wrong, ladies. Wouldn't this solve most relationship conflicts? If your partner would listen to your problem and only respond with thoughtful and engaging questions, not let me solve your problem advice. Life is filled with conflict, and mediation is the practice of resolving conflict. So the new possibility that I was pondering was, what would my life be like if I were authentically connected to my family? Was it possible to use mediation to solve my conflict? Could we find perspective and gain empathy into each other's lives, creating the space necessary for a an authentic family connection. So 2 years, let's see, how many years was it? 2 years? No, it was the second question in which my sister Melanie called. She's the only child of the family, as she came years later, if you know what I mean. She called to discuss the question and the possible answers that were swimming around in her head. And this call came each week for several weeks until one day the call came and we weren't discussing the question at all. We were just talking and we were telling stories of that week's events. Fast forward a few months later, in September of that year, Melanie flew to New York City to celebrate her birthday with me. We rode our bikes around Central Park. We enjoyed the Broadway musical Wicked. And we connected over Carnegie Deli pastrami sandwiches and black and white cookies. With every conversation we had, the connection grew stronger. 2 years, 4 months, 120 questions, and vulnerably shared answers later, I was boarding a plane in Reno, heading to Denver, Colorado, on October 31st, 2015. To say that Halloween is Melanie's favorite holiday is a huge understatement. I'd been planning a surprise to celebrate with her on her favorite day for weeks, and on one of our many weekly calls, I found out that her and her husband, Mark, and their 3 kids, Haley, Hannah, and Liam, would all be wearing vampire costumes. So when I landed in Denver, I rented the car, drove the 2 hours south to Pueblo, Colorado, and went to the local Walmart where I rented my vampire costume. I guess I purchased my vampire costume, and knocked on her door with the ultimate trick or treat. After picking her surprised body up off the floor, we went trick-or-treating as a family. And that was the connection that I had been searching for. That was the family connection I had been searching for. Just 2 days ago, Melanie flew to Salt Lake City and drove here to Idaho Falls with me, supporting me in this opportunity to share our family story on this stage and to celebrate the TEDx experience. 3 years, 5 months, and 3 weeks later, my sister-in-law, Natalie, asked what I thought to be the most insignificant question. What is your favorite toy growing up? What was your favorite toy growing up as a kid? I struggled all week long to think of my favorite toy as a kid, and I struggled even harder with connecting with the value of this question until the answers. My mother answered, as a young child, I had a stuffed animal named Shmoo. I sang to my Shmoo every night before going to bed. This was years before Barbies. The story of Shmoo is a story of my mother's life. And it's a story that no member of my family, including my father, knew about. And it's a story that would have died with her were it not for this question. It was my answer, however, that surprised me the most. I responded by saying, I love the sandbox. I loved playing in the sandbox with my little brother Tommy. We played for hours building cars, trains, rockets out of constructs, a form of Lego. We begged our mother for cap guns. We tried to earn a few of them. I loved my big wheel. I loved the hand-me-down bike I received at Christmas. And there isn't a baseball or football that I didn't enjoy tossing around in the backyard with my brother Tom. It was in this moment that I realized my favorite toy growing up as a kid was my brother Tom. Connecting with my family has been an experiment with vulnerability. And it has been one of the greatest things I have ever done in my life. And I have discovered through one question a week, as simple as one question a week, who my family is and who I am. You know, each question asked, the answer is a story from your past. It's a story about what is currently going on in your life right now. And it is a story of what you would like to see in your future. So question 7. Question 7 was, what is the bravest thing you have ever done? Come to find out, the bravest thing I've ever done is to ask to disconnect. To disconnect from somebody I loved once upon a time enough to marry when I asked her for a divorce. Question 22. What is the greatest gift you have ever received? The greatest gift I have ever received was from a girlfriend who asked all my family and friends to write a letter of what I meant to them. And each letter was wrapped in a custom-made envelope because each letter was truly a gift. It wasn't until years later that I was able to reopen one of those gifts from my sister-in-law, Cammie, who had tragically died drowning on the Middle Fork of the Boise River. And I was able to read in her words the value that I had created in her life. Question 32. What is it like to be you? This is my favorite question. Every time you ask this question, you are inviting someone to share vulnerably their life from their experience. It seems to stir up a lot of emotion every time this question is asked, as people vulnerably verbalize what it is to be them. So my heartfelt invitation to each of you is to commit to a new possibility. A possibility where you vulnerably and authentically connect. You create a new possibility. In today's world, where we are in the time of the greatest connectivity in the history of the world, isn't it more important than ever that we ask questions, we listen to the answers, and we create the space for connection? For a connection to our community, a connection to our personal families, and a connection to ourselves. What I didn't know when starting this is that the greatest connection that I would create, and the one I value most, is the connection to myself. When I started this, I said that I launched a revolution, a connection revolution. And that is exactly what happened. A fun and life-changing exploration of self-awareness. Each question that I answered was, I got connected to my past. I got connected to the stories I share, and I got connected to my ability as a creator of the stories of my future. So, what would your life be like if you were authentically connected to your family?